peanut gallery in Sacramento. I don't know. I do have word, Maria, that Commissioner Dow is on her way, which in Los Angeles means somewhere within the hour. Executive Director, I already apologize that I can't use my Zoom background. That's when you got on the phone, that's why I was being harassed by Commissioner Vang about, but I'm in this large room and it did not work. It begins to look like a cartoon situation in this very big room. Otherwise, I would have followed instructions.
You're fine. Thank you.
I would like to follow up after the meeting about Commissioner Vang, though, and his treatment of me. So.
Was that I had really bad connection? I'm kidding.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
Another minute or two?
Yes, I'd like to see if another few commissioners can join us, Commissioner.
Sounds good. Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. How is everybody? Okay? Doing good?
Well.
Awesome.
Brave the travel thing, went back to the Midwest, which was very beautiful for that last hurrah weekend. If you know anything about the Midwest, you get that last hurrah and it's all downhill from here, weather-wise. Morning, Lily.
Good morning.
Daisy, before we get online, just a follow-up to our conversation that you and Cifuentes and I had. There are at least 3 to 4 presidents and or enrollment VPs that we could contact with those HBCUs. I looked at to see was on the community college list to see who they were. I know personally 2 of the presidents, have met one of the other ones that I spoke to recently. And then the other one, of course, our other commissioner, that's her alma mater. So I'm just sharing that as background for you, having looked at that over the weekend, that if we wanted to do some sort of consultative thing, that could happen. And I'm happy to share with you which institutions at another time.
Great. Sounds like we should have a convening with them.
It might not be a bad thing, and I'm sure they'd be happy to. So just FYI.
We can kick it off and host it in January. We were going to do something anyways, so more to come. That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Chair Day. I think we can get started.
Okay, we have quorum?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, well, good morning, everybody. I'm happy to call the lab committee meeting to order. The time is 9:03 a.m. I hope that you're all well. I hope that you all appropriately closed out your summer, the unofficial
in progress.
at the unofficial end of summer. I hope that everyone had a wonderful weekend and that you are ready to go and beginning to get back in the flow of things. So very nice to see you. I do hope you're well. Maria, can we begin with a roll call, please?
Chair Day,
Present.
Commissioner Doppelmore, absent. Commissioner Dow, absent. Commissioner Gary, absent. Commissioner Vang,
Present.
Commissioner Saravia, absent. Commissioner Cifuentes, ex officio.
Present.
Quorum is established.
Thank you. Maria, do we have any comments on items not on the agenda? Any comments from anybody from items not on the agenda? I'm not seeing anyone.
We have no
Please.
comments in Rancho Cordova or no virtual hands raised, Commissioner.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, let me just say we are starting off in what is perhaps one of the most different legislative and budget seasons many of us have seen, perhaps even in our careers. And this has been quite a time as we have navigated. I want to acknowledge our financial aid personnel on campuses who are having to navigate this and be the interface between agencies like ours and others and students and families. And their navigation of this has been really quite extraordinary. And I want to keep them in mind as we think about our work and we do our work. I want to say that we have had certainly an interesting time, and I'm appreciative of the work that we're going to do today and the presentation that's going to happen, thinking about our own budget as an agency. And I'm particularly appreciative of our executive director and her leadership of really providing us guideposts around which to move through our budget process, to think about the changes that we were going to need to make, both temporary changes, but also long-term adjustments, so that we have a North Star to be able to look at as we move forward, which is essentially our framework, our strategic planning framework. And it really gives us the way to think about how decisions are getting made and how we should really consider decisions going forward. We have a very good presentation that's going to happen today to really talk about our budget. I know this has been a committee where we have really sort of really delved into this conversation as is appropriate for this committee. And we've asked a number of times for the team at CSAC to return to this committee and provide updates on the budget, which they have diligently done and done a wonderful job. And I think today represents sort of a coming to perhaps somewhat of another side, as our executive director has now been with us for a period of time and has allowed us to think a little bit differently and to move differently through this process, and has enabled us to successfully, and I'll say, Dr. Gonzalez, to continually successfully navigate a changing budget and legislative landscape. And so that's going to be an important part of what we do today. I ask everybody to please be mindful as you look at our budget. Let's be mindful of our role, but also be mindful of our colleagues at CSAC and the work that they need to get done, and also mindful of the landscape within which we are all asked to operate at this time. Your insights will be particularly important in this committee, both today and in an ongoing way. This is a committee that's going to have a great deal of impact on the work of CSAC. And so your best thinking will be important as we support our executive director and that team as they move the conversation forward in supporting students across the state of California. So with that, I want to move to item 4, which is the approval of the lab committee minutes for the meeting on December 4th. You've all received that document in your packet. Thank you, Maria. And please, if there are any comments or questions that people have about the minutes from December. Take a moment. You already have. Be happy to entertain a motion.
I motion.
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Vang. Commissioner Gary? It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Maria, should I let you do that part?
Yes, I can do the voting roll call.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem, Commissioner. Chair Day,
Aye?
Commissioner Dopplemore, absent. Commissioner Dow, absent. Commissioner Gary,
Aye.
Commissioner Saravia, absent. Commissioner Vang,
Aye.
Commissioner Catalina Cifuentes, ex officio.
Aye.
The motion approves.
Maria, you still with us?
Yes,
Okay, well,
Commissioner, my
somebody make sure
apologies.
Maria's
The
all right.
motion
She's still
moves.
with us. All right, very good. Glad you're okay. We need you. Thank you, everybody. All right, and with that, we're going to continue to move through our agenda. Happy to invite Dr. Gonzalez to provide us with this comprehensive update on operations and budget. So, Dr. Gonzalez, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Day. Good morning, commissioners. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm going to set the context. It has been exactly 1 year since we brought this item to you, and it was a very different context. Last year, when I arrived, we were facing a lot of instability, not just because of state agency reductions across all state agencies, but because of our fiscal outlook. A lot of decisions that CSAC had to make out of necessity before I arrived. So today, it gives me great honor to be able to set the context for where we were in 2024-25, meaning the year end last year, and where we're headed today. Always grateful for the commission and the commissioner's support, particularly when asked to do multi-year budgeting. And so you will see that in today's presentation. We are looking at a 3-year outlook always. And I want to acknowledge and honor our Deputy Director, Lily Myers, our Budget Officer, Sandy Melching, who are here and have been leading this work for the agency. They have really difficult jobs, meaning they make really hard decisions to keep us on task, to make sure that our budget is balanced. And so I want to just say thank you to them. The item is very intentional. So what you are going to see is 25-26 is our focus, because that is where we are today. What I can tell you is we have successfully balanced 24-25. I want to congratulate the team and all the work that went into that. And we're going to really focus on the future. So the purpose of the presentation is quite simple. One, we're going to update you on how we achieved the balanced budget for 24-25. And the second purpose of the item is to disclose how we're going to get there over the next 3 years, not just to stabilize, but to really focus on growth for CSAC. Growth in order to reach more students, more families with adequate support. Why do I say that? Because there's the operational budget, and then there's all the philanthropy, the partnerships that we've had to launch just to be able to keep up with the impact that we need to be making in the state. And so for this presentation, you're looking at 24-25, where we have been, and then focus on the future. I want to hand it over to Sandy this morning, who's going to walk us through the slides. And Sandy, you're up.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Good morning, Chair Day and Commissioners. I'm Sandy Melching, CSAC's Budget Officer. Today, I'll be presenting on how the department obligated their fiscal year 24-25 state operation funding. But first, I'd like to review how our 23-24 operation budget compared to our 24-25 operating budget. So we're going to start first here at the top row, our appropriation row. So in 24-25, our appropriation was actually $807,000 less than the following year. And that was essentially due to the statewide department operating reductions that Dr. Gonzalez just referred to, as well as a statewide reduction to employee retirement benefits paid for by the state. So for those two were basically the main variables that made it so that our appropriation was close to $1 million less than the prior year. So the next row displays the total dollars spent in each of the fiscal years. For 24-25, the one thing to note here that these are figures as of August 26th. The fiscal year has not yet officially closed. The books haven't closed. We are probably just days away of closing. The numbers are all in the system in concrete, so I don't really anticipate any significant changes, but I just wanted to caveat that before I talk about this row. Um, so another thing, let's see. Another thing to note that the 25.6 million appears as though we exceeded our appropriation amount of 23.2 million. However, the 2.4 million from the total expenditures were charged to administrative carve-outs, which I'll discuss a little bit more about carve-outs on the next slide. And then $197,000 in expenditures were charged to the public interest attorney loan repayment program. We have a support appropriation for that program. So these funds allowed the department to expend $424,000 more in 24-25 than in 23-24. Okay, so now down to the next row, the liquidated balance. The liquidated balances are the unexpended funds that were returned to the general fund from the annual appropriation. So in 24-25, we returned about $25,000 less than the prior year. So 24-25, $151,000 is going back to the general fund. We technically keep this funding for the next 2 years, just in case we need to pay anything out of a prior year. So sometimes if there's like a workers' compensation claim or something, they may make us pay it out of prior year. So we do want to keep a little bit of money in here. So 151,000 is a pretty safe number. We don't expect anything to be charged to the prior year in excess of that amount. So moving down to the percentage used. So in 24-25, because we utilized carve-out funds, and annual appropriation dollars, we utilized 110% of the funding that we had available, which is about 6% higher than the prior year. Moving down to the carve-out balance row. So again, I'll talk about carve-outs a little bit more in the next slide, but those are our starting balances each year. So of our starting carve-out balances of each year. So in 23-24, we started out with about $4.4 million to expend. And then we spent about 1.2 million in carve out. So our starting balance in 24-25 is about $3.2 million to start off with. And then our position authority. So our position authority did not change from the prior year. We were not provided any new positions in 24-25. So our position authority, which is the amount of employees we are allowed to permanently hire, remained at 153.5 PYs. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so now here's where I'm going to talk about carve-outs, and I'd like to first describe what a carve-out is, since this is something that's pretty unique to state funding. So essentially, when CSAC is provided funding for a new financial aid program, to administer a new financial aid program, occasionally we are allowed to use a percentage of that local assistance appropriation, so the funding that we receive to disperse grants, we can, per statute, use a percentage of that money to administer the program for state supports, for state support. So in our situation, we have 2 administrative carve-outs that we've been spending from. We received both of these carve-outs back in fiscal year 21-22, and legislative statute allows an extended spending authority. So typically we have 1 year to expend funds and then 2 years to expend anything that we may have encumbered, which is something where we can encumber through POs and contracts and then pay out of them at a later date. So we have, for the Golden State Teacher Grant Program, we received an administrative carve out of 7.5 million. So in 21-22, our local assistance appropriation, so the funding that became available to us to disperse Golden State teacher grants, was $500 million. So we had about 1.5, I think it was about 1.5% of that appropriation we were allowed to spend to support that program. So starting in 21-22, we had 7.5 million. And then this displays a timeline of how we have spent those dollars each fiscal year until they will run dry. So Golden State, we started 7.5 million in 21-22. And then through that timeline where we are today, starting in the 25-26 fiscal year, we have about $2 million to expend. And this funding actually runs out at the end of this fiscal year. So statute only allows us to expend these funds until June 30th, 2026. So as soon as these funds run out, we will not get them again. They're gone. So we need to spend this entire remaining funds in this year. And then next, the Learning Aligned Employment Program, another appropriation where we got $500 million, but it was like 0.5% we could spend for support for this program. So as you may know, I'm sure you know, the Learning Aligned Employment Program was eliminated by the state last year, or I guess the year before. So we uh, essentially wanted to expend the remaining amount of our support funds since that program no longer exists. So you'll see that we started in 21-22 with 2.5 million and then continued to spend out of that appropriation. And then in last year, 24-25, we committed the entirety of that appropriation to our budget. So going into 25-26, we have $0 available. So all in all, with carve outs, we have $2 million to spend this year. So that's essentially $2 million on top of the appropriation, the annual appropriation that we'll be receiving, or that we received this year. Next slide, please. All right, so this slide is a view of the 24-25 state operations, appropriations, and obligation broken out by program area. So beginning on the left side, you'll see the department's programs alongside their appropriation amounts. And then you'll see the encumbrances, which I mentioned before. Encumbrances is it's kind of the vessel that we use to pay, usually contracts or things that have an extended amount of time where we're being provided services, maybe in 1 year, but we have a 3-year contract. So we can encumber it in 1 year, which is putting all of those funds aside in 1 year and then paying out of just those funds that are set aside for the next years to the end of that contract. So we have our encumbrances in our next row, and then our expenditures. So that is actually what we have spent. So that is dollars out the door already. So total committed for 24-25 for internal operations. I'm sorry, for our internal operations, which is kind of our catch-all. So anything that's not associated with a program or an administrative carve-out. In 24-25, our beginning appropriation was about $23.2 million. And then we've obligated altogether about $22.5 million. So the internal operations, it includes a majority of our labor expenses and a majority of our operating expenses and equipment, which I'm going to go into a little bit more on the next slide. So under the internal operations row, you'll see the public interest attorney loan repayment program. So this is the support dollars that we receive in order to administer this program. So last year we were provided $199,000, and from that we've spent $197,000. So just about all of that appropriation that was provided to us, we've spent. And then moving down to the three programs you see here in blue. So these are our programs where we have reimbursement authority. So CSAC works alongside with the California Military Department and Department of Social Services and the Justice Department for these three reimbursement programs. We have a contract with each of those state departments where we do services on their behalf. So they basically have the funding in their budget, but we do the services. So they provide us reimbursement for what we've paid out. So in local assistance. So we also get support dollars. So these are show the support dollars. So the costs of administering each of those programs. This is what we receive from those departments each year. So from the California Military Department, we receive about $137,000. We spent all of it. The John R. Justice grants. $29,000 through that department, spent all of that. And then also the Chafee Foster Youth Awards program. We're provided about $360,000. So we've encumbered some of those dollars through a contract, through an IT consulting contract. And then we've spent about $255,000. So $360,000 was completely spent, and that's our we've spent I guess we spent all of our contract authority. And then moving down to our administrative carve out. So the Learning Aligned Employment Program, we've spent all of that. Like I had mentioned on the following slide, about $1.2 million was spent from what was remaining. And then the Golden State Teacher Grant Program, we spent we had a little bit more. As you can remember, we had a beginning balance of about, I can't remember on the last slide, I think like about 3 million, probably a little bit less. But we ended up only needing to use about $1.2 million from that support, and any of those unused funds just rolled over into this year. So that's where that $2 million we have this year is just rolled over funds from what we didn't spend out of those support dollars from the prior year. So all in all, for the Golden State Teacher Grant Program, we spent about $1.2 million this year. Leaving our total, or getting to our total of about $25.6 million spent in all state operation operation obligations. Our reimbursement contract authority, even though our reimbursement authority through the state budget is $606,000, technically we can only spend up to our contracted authority amount, which is these are numbers that are derived from those other agencies that we work with for the California Military GI Bill, John R. Justice, and Chafee grants. So from there, we received $588,000. So in total state operations funding, so what we actually spent using like our own funding was about $25 million. Next slide, please.
Andy, before you move forward, I want to go back
Sure.
to the last slide just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Mhm.
We have new commissioners here.
Yes.
So in general, what you're seeing at the top, the internal operations, right? That's primarily your general fund operating funds that are provided to CSAC from the state. Those dollars revert back if we don't use them, right? Year after year, you're allowed to keep a few. So where we have the most flexibility in our budget, because we have three main primary revenue sources that are very structural: general fund operations. Then you have your carve outs. These are the administrative funds. It's a percentage of running a program, typically granted one time, which is why CSAC has to kind of stretch it out over multiple years, but you can move it around. So a little bit of more flexibility than a general fund dollar. And then you have your reimbursements, which are more of agreements, MOUs with another state agency to operate a program. While small in number, they matter because it's the most kind of flexible. It could also mean CSAC could go back and renegotiate. So just wanted to mention that here. We have three primary revenue sources. Two are more flexible than the other. And then the next slide, I think Sandy shows them where have we spent that money.
Mhm. That's right. All right, so this slide is a view of our state operations broken out by spending category. So you can see again that the total expenditures are just over $25 million, as shown on the previous slide. And then here's where you can see the types of expenditures that occurred in 24-25. Our largest type of expenditure is our personal services right up at the top. So personal services, it attributed to about 78.4% of our overall spending. Personal services include expenditures such as CSAC employee salaries, benefits, lump sum payout. So like when a employee leaves state service, we pay out all of their hours that have been accrued, vacation hours, CTO, things like that. Insurance premiums, and then workers' compensation claims. So that all comes out of our personal services budget. So that is our biggest spending area right there. Under our personal services are our operating expenses. So these are all of the expenditure categories that allow us to run our department efficiently. So these are things like printing, our lease costs, our travel, training, IT equipment, things like that. Those are all of our operating expenses in there. So the second largest type of spending is driven from the consulting and professional services category. That is about the fourth row from the bottom. You'll see that we spent about $2.6 million or 10.5% of our overall spending. And this is the category where all of our contracts reside. So our primarily external contracts where we need services outside of what we're capable of doing in-house. We contract out. And like I said, about 2.6 million or $2.7 million, excuse me, was spent towards our contracting needs in 24-25. The next largest expense is our IT and consolidated data centers, which is about 5.8%. We committed about 1.5%. So all of our spending in this category is really attributed to hardware and software costs, as well as things we pay to the California Department of Technology. So we pay for things like internet, like our cloud, Amazon web services, our cloud support services. Um, Things like we have state contracts, so like our Microsoft Office suite, we try to get on as many state contracts as possible because typically it's cheaper. California Department has a Microsoft Office suite contract, so we pay California Department of Technology, and that falls in our consolidated data centers expenditure category. So beyond that, we have various items which have expended under 3%, which are really a variety of overhead costs to support the commission. And with that, I will turn it over to Lily. Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners. So you got the numbers, how we landed 24-25, but this next part of our presentation is going to take you through a recap of how we got there, how we strategically had to manage our expenditures with our estimates and our actuals and our multi-year projections going forward. And we really want to give you a solid recap on that storyline so that you can see the magnitude and impact of the changes we've experienced throughout 24-25. So this next slide is our budget recap. At the beginning of the last fiscal year, CSAC identified a structural deficit in the out years that started in 25-26 and 26-27. And this is due to the rising costs of the market conditions, inflation, technological advances that impact prices in the way we do business. This is seen across all cost categories and included things like increase for technology, consolidated data centers, software memberships, trainings, facilities, and even travel. Additionally, we had limited carve-out support at the time that was set to end in 25-26, which impacted our ability to have a balanced budget. In addition to that, the state overall was going through a deficit of their own. And we learned that the state was going to impose 2 statewide reduction drills that would impact our budget even further, which was a government efficiency reduction drill of up to 7.95% of operating expenditures and equipment, and a vacancy savings sweep to reduce vacant positions and associated salary savings that would eliminate positions and dollars for departments that had over a 10% vacancy rate. So these were all things that were looming ahead of us. And so what we had to do was we had to create some cost-cutting measures. If we can go to the next slide, please. And these cost-cutting measures are things you've probably seen or heard from us before, things that we had to do to achieve as much savings to anticipate both of those cuts and the structural deficit that we had to potentially plan for in the upcoming fiscal year. Halfway through the year, we learned after the Jan 10 governor's budget that the government efficiency drill that was originally presented to us had a price of about a 1.8 million. Department of Finance ultimately imposed a reduction of only 107,000 for our department. The vacancy savings drill that was originally presented to us had a price tag of 847,000. Ultimately, we only received a reduction of 150,000. We also submitted a BCP to help anticipate and advocate for the structural deficit that we anticipated, and it was considered by the legislature, and we continued to advocate it through May Revise, and it was ultimately approved in our 2025 Budget Act. So the anticipated savings of all the things that you see here on the screen with hiring freeze, reducing all operational expenditures where possible, maximizing our reimbursements, sharing travel costs, and so on, became something that we could turn into an opportunity for CSAC to support mid-year strategic investments in a much different way than the status quo, which I'm going to share with you in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So this next slide is a comparison chart of our estimated 24-25 appropriation amounts at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. So the July 1, 2024 estimate, the one you see on the left, are figures we've presented to you around last year, around this time. The July 1, 2025 actuals are how we ended the year with the net changes to the government efficiency reduction drill, the vacancy savings sweep, and the anticipation of our structural deficit being restored. This also includes our revised spending, where you can see our OE&E expenditures towards the bottom of the slide go up from about 5 million to about 5.5 by the end of the year. Both side-by-side comparisons leave a balanced budget. However, you can see that we drove our appropriation balance down from about a 780,000 surplus to about 151,000 surplus. This is a healthy, balanced budget and a reflection of how CSAC closely monitors its budget and forecasts and strives to utilize our entire appropriation authority. Next slide, please. So here is another view of our financial projections and plays into a multi-year financial projection. You can see that the personal services appropriation is somewhat steady, with OE&E growing in the next year to about 4.9 million. This is a result of our structural deficit supporting our needs where carve-outs will not. Contract reimbursements were trued up to about 514,000 starting in 25-26 and will stay steady in 26-27 as we have multiple reimbursement agreements and we have realigned them to our contract amounts. You will also see the year-over-year changes to the carve-outs for Golden State teachers. You see the 21-22 carve-out ends at the end of this fiscal year, as well as we have a one-time carve-out for Golden State in just this fiscal year alone, and our Learning Aligned carve-out ended in the prior fiscal year. So you see all of those roll off, and you don't see those in 26-27. The advocacy, the forecasting, the cost-cutting measures, all of the efforts that went into 24-25 allowed us to have a forecasted balanced budget of the $849,000 in 25-26 and a $400,000 in 26-27 respectively. These out-year budgets are favorable because of the work we did in 24-25. However, while it ensures the stability of our department, it does not mean we're in a place of growth just yet. So moving on to the next slide, please. So enough on the numbers. Here are the actions that were tied to the numbers that we just shared with you that allowed us to end fiscal year 24-25 with a healthy balanced budget. So some of these strategic opportunities that we were able to maximize before the end of the fiscal year was backfilling vacant positions in alignment with the greatest workload needs. We've provided ongoing IT consultant support and managed our contracts so that we have the continuity of that workload. We've invested in organizational engagement and cultural transformation, including DEIA, change management, as well as a learning management system for the entire department. We've invested in CalSOAPs for the support of data evaluation. We've also invested in Golden State teachers to support research evaluation, outreach and communications, and additional IT consultant support. We have invested money in a strategy plan for undocumented students, as well as student assistance support in the call center. And we've provided funding for other operational needs throughout the department, including things like travel and shares and other external HR support needs. All of these investments are strategic throughout the 24-25 year, aligned to our blueprint, and consider the long-term goals and are positioning us for sustained success. Next slide, please. Now, going forward to 25-26 as part of our multi-year strategy, the Commission submitted 4 budget change proposals to be considered as part of the 25-26 budget. Of those 4 PCPs, only 2 of them have been considered, which is what you see here. The first one is the baseline increase to right-size the OE&E, which is the structural deficit that I mentioned in the previous slides. And the second one is to provide cybersecurity support for the IT office. So we received 1 position for that BCP, and then a total combined amount of 1.6 in 25-26 and 3.25 in 26-27 ongoing. While not all of our budget requests were approved, these are significant gains. We were able to restore our shortfall, eliminating the structural deficit, and these funds will allow us to continue business as usual without further departmental budget cuts. The cybersecurity support will allow the Commission to align with both the federal and state priorities and regulations to mature and enhance the cybersecurity protections for Californians' privacy and security, including meeting the requirements of the CalSecure Cybersecurity Maturation Roadmap. I want to stop and thank the commissioners, the administration, the legislature, the Department of Finance for all your continued support of the CSAC's mission. This was a very tough budget year, and I can say Sandy and I have been here for 5 years, and this has been the most challenging and rewarding budget year. Getting through it, I nearly dropped to my knees when the structural deficit BCP was approved. So thank you again. As we close here, next slide, I just want to go into the position authority just to go over that detail. We started our authority for the 24-25 fiscal year at 153.5 positions. Adjustments were made, including the approved BCP for that cybersecurity, which is 1 position, and then the corresponding vacancy sweep statewide efficiency reduction drill was a reduction of a 0.75 PY with the corresponding funding, which brings us to a service level of 153.75 positions for this department. So why is that important? Next slide, please. So what we do is incredibly impactful and matters. With the 153.75 positions, we actually have 136 filled at this point in time. And what we do with that 136 is we provide 1.2 million students who apply for financial aid annually, but we actually serve 2.2 million served annually with 1.2 renewed annually. We serve almost 3,000 K through 12 districts and 450 institutions of higher education. And we put out about 3.9 billion in state investment for financial aid. So with that, I'm going to turn that back to Dr. Gonzalez, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Sandy. First round of applause for all of your work. I know we're all in different rooms, but Lily and Sandy, you did an incredible job getting us through. And you're absolutely right that BCP was keeping us in suspense. So a lot of gratitude to our governor, to the legislature and Department of Finance, our allies who joined us in advocacy. And it was not easy, commissioners, but I'm so grateful that I can tell you that we have a balanced budget for 24-25, as you heard us say, while we're losing some of those carve-outs, those administrative percentages, because those programs no longer exist at CSAC or because they were funded one time. We continue to stay on course. One thing I want to mention to you is as we look into the future, right? Obviously, renegotiating reimbursements with other agencies, it means that that has to be one of the top strategies. And of course, the Golden State Teacher Grant Program, a really critical program for the state of California for aspiring teachers. That ongoing renewal will be really important for CSAC and for students in California. So I want to hand it back to you, Chair Day, and answer any questions and any feedback that you all may have for us.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we're going to take a break because we're all exhausted from that presentation because it was so overwhelming and excellent, but we'll try and hang in here. I just want to say thank you. Sandy, Lily, thank you so very much. And of course, Dr. Gonzalez, that was exceptional, incredibly helpful. Thank you for walking it through for those of us in the back. I appreciate it very, very much. Maria, just to make a note that Commissioner Dow is now with us. So I just want everybody to be aware, thankfully. But that was really great. I have a couple of clarification questions. And one, Commissioner Dow and I want to find out when we can come up to Sacramento and take you for a steak dinner. But beyond that, just some clarifications. Carve-outs. And thank you, Sandy, for the additional explanation. Do we have, are there, and what I heard from you, and please clarify, what I heard from you is they are not completely restricted and allow for an investment in the general budget. So, and I imagine there's some nuance there that obviously they are for the program, but that you are provided with some flexibility. So if you could clarify that. And then the second thing for you and perhaps for Dr. Gonzalez, do we have a metric for that spending? Because I saw the spending sort of moved around over the course of the 3 years, which may be completely intentional. I'm just wondering how we think about, because it's a very interesting kind of funding mechanism. And I'm wondering how we think about that when those come into us. And I know that's one of the things that you've spent a lot of time thinking about as we got to this 3-year balanced budget is how do we maybe think about carve-outs in a different way? Just wondering if you could just shed a little bit of light.
Sure. Okay. So with our carve-outs that we have now, really the bulk of what we spend, the carve-outs, are employee salaries. So and salaries and benefits, I suppose. So we have noticed that when when we receive a new grant program, we're administering it, pretty much every hand in the department touches it in one way or another. So if it's accounting, paying claims, or program, just administering the program in general, legal, looking at regulations, whatever it is. So at the beginning of the year, what we do is a labor distribution where we have already decided at the beginning of the year the percentage of each person's salary that's going to be allocated to be spent towards the program. So depending on the amount of work that they do, we we allocate those dollars to be spent out of the administrative carve outs. So so most of it, that is where the bulk of it is. I want to say 99.9% of the money is spent towards our salaries there. So we want to, and that's another way for us to make sure that we have fully expended all of those carve outs because we don't want any of those dollars to be returned back. So that is kind of a safeguard. It's a great way for us to make sure that we spend that funding. As things come up, we do keep some funding aside for things like if there's IT needs or if there's like a mail out, or something that we want to spend, some outreach dollars that we want to spend towards. We have money set aside for that, but really the bulk of it is spent towards employee salaries. And
It's
then
very helpful. Oh,
think-
please.
oh no,
Please.
I was just gonna. So your next question, can you clarify a little bit? You wanted to know the metrics of how we decide how to spend the funding. Was that
I
just for
think
carve
you've
outs?
answered that
Was
question.
that okay?
I
Okay, I
think
was
you
just
you
making
got a
sure.
labor distribute. That's
Yep, that was it.
That's
Yep.
there.
Okay.
Let me just ask. So Lily, my favorite question about IT. And you had one line, if I'm remembering the chart, that was about IT and one that was about consulting and professional services. As we go forward, I'm just wondering how and I know I appreciate the BCP. I mean, I just think you've done an amazing job, and I know we're thinking in some different ways about this now. And I'm just wondering how we're thinking about those lines. By the way, I think your budget is incredibly thoughtful and very tight. But I'm wondering how we're thinking about that interplay between those two areas, and do we have enough in the IT space? And obviously, I heard Dr. Gonzalez what you said around we're going to need to continue to think about revenue, future BCPs. We've got one in play, so none of that's lost to me. I'm just wondering how we're thinking about getting to where we need to get to in terms of IT security and just ongoing functionality.
So I'll let you fill in behind me, Daisy, where I might fall short, but we do review all of our expenditures on an annual basis. We look at our costs, we look at our projects going forward, and we allocate our funding based on those needs. I know that we have goals and a North Star with our IT projects and our our roadmap, and our efforts are in alignment with that. I'll give it to Daisy, Dr. Gonzalez, to maybe add a little bit more on the IT aspect.
Thank you, Lily. I'm wondering if you could pull up the slide actually. So there were two lines. One of them is hardware, IT hardware, and then there was the contractors. The majority of those contractors are in IT. And when I first got here, there were more than 12 different contractors in IT, Commissioner Day, which should be of importance to us, right? We are now down to 5 or 6. Is that correct, Sandy or Lily? So nearly half. Why? Because we've been doing workload analysis. Every single employee in the agency on a weekly basis reports what they are working towards so that we could understand the highest need areas. For the contractors, while limited, it also gives us the opportunity to invest where we need to invest. So for example, Golden State Teacher Grant Program, lots of changes last year. That absolutely requires IT changes. And so we either fit it into an existing contractor or we have to go out to bid all over again. So yeah, I want to acknowledge just so IT and consolidated data centers, that was more of the infrastructure as Sandy shared. The consulting and professional services, Sandy, I don't know if you have off the top of your head, out of that 10.5%, what percentage is IT?
Probably 10%.
Okay.
It's close. It's
So
called 9.5.
the majority of the consultants that you have right now are all in the IT area. Now, how do we get to the future of where we need to be, particularly for cybersecurity needs? You saw one investment in one PY, but also when we're able to balance our budget, we're able to then shift and invest in new areas. I can tell you that there are two things into the future that will be really important for CSAC. The first is that California Department of Technology assessment, which means now we know exactly what our areas of need are, what are the deficiencies, if I may. And then on the other side, I've asked Dora, who's not in this meeting per se, but we will be bringing your IT roadmap back to the full commission at your December or January meeting so that we can show you what we're going to need to invest in all over again. You're also going to see a number of BCPs for the 26, 27, at least one, trying to create more opportunities to reinvest in our IT area. There is no other way around it. Every agency has IT needs, but as you saw, 2.1 million applications annually, that is really high risk for a lot of data needs that this agency has. I hope that answered the question, Commissioner Day.
It absolutely does. I thank you very, very much. Commissioner Dow.
Thank you so much, Lily and Sandy and Dr. Gonzalez, for that, just the amazing work and the balancing act that you had to do to balance that budget. I have a couple of questions. One, you noted on one of the slides that part of the strategy for making our budget, ensuring we can deliver, is maximizing philanthropic opportunities. And so just wanted to know if there is, within this budget, do we bank on some philanthropic dollars coming in? Is there a place where we see those showing up in the budget? Because I didn't see any sort of lines, and I am wondering what's coming in and how are those allocated?
Happy to answer that question, Commissioner Dow. A lot of that philanthropy is not money that CSAC can accept. So it lives on the foundation, who's our fiscal agent. So for example, last year, $250,000 from Haas Junior Fund just to be able to launch our outreach and marketing. That was all the different languages, the mailings, the social media campaigns. That was all Haas Junior Fund, very restrictive funding based on the application. We also had a smaller grant, 60,000, that was really focused more on the research. How do you make data actionable? That all lives on the foundation side. And then for this year, we also have a philanthropy outreach campaign as well as reimbursements. So we have a new reimbursement where we're working with the State Chancellor's Office for California Community Colleges, really focus for that project on the professional development needs of that system. And so they're willing to give us a reimbursement just to help them, especially do onboarding and training for adult learners, right? What are the financial programs that we have that adult learners can benefit from? On the philanthropic side, a lot of interest right now and resources coming in for new outreach for 26, 27. And you usually, as commissioners, will get to see all of that work in two ways. One is in that executive director report that happens every meeting that you have. And then on the other end, on your Friday updates, and then certainly during the evaluation process.
Can you just tell me, Dr. Gonzalez, where CSAC has a separate foundation?
No, we are not allowed to have a foundation. That was not authority that CSAC has had for several years. We are required to have a fiscal agent. So the Foundation for California Community Colleges is the fiscal agent.
Okay, got it. Thanks for clarifying.
So any philanthropy that we do can only be received by them, not by CSAC.
Got it.
And they typically charge us an 18 or 20% overhead, by the way. So so imagine that 250,000 minus the 20%.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. It would be helpful just because when I do look at some of the outreach line items or even the travel line items that we officially have, they're very low, but knowing that we have some, philanthropic dollars to backfill that, I think as commissioners, we know how important it is for our outreach function, for us to get out there, for the team to be able to present in all corners of the states really important information. And so knowing that there is in some ways, a complementary revenue stream to what we have in the state budget is helpful to seeing the full picture. My last question was around, I think on one of the slides, there was a learning management system that was listed out. Can you share what that is?
A learning management system is a software tool that is going to be used for the student aid commission as well internally as well as externally. And it allows us to conduct trainings, manage the repository of trainings that student aid commission staff take. And it'll also ensure compliance for some of the mandatory compliance trainings that we have to take every year, every 2 years. And it also provides us with access to a lot of online virtual training sessions so that we can have self-paced trainings on demand in an effort to increase our organizational engagement and excellence in the workplace.
Dr. Gonzalez, just since you said that out loud, I'm wondering if the 18 to 20% administrative charge, if that is a standard charge for fiscal agents?
I've been in higher ed for a while, and I would say yes. However, it doesn't mean that it can't be negotiated. That's absolutely something that the team and I have been looking into with other foundations. Right now, because the funders that we currently have are used to working with the Foundation for California Community Colleges, we have stayed there.
Mhm.
But it is the standard at that foundation, the 18 to 20%.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very. I will defer to the chair on that item. Perhaps we can revisit that on another day. Thank you. Are there other questions for our team? Other questions from commissioners on the presentation or comments? Okay. All right. I want to say thank you again, Lily and Sandy. Really wonderful work. We're very fortunate to have you as a part of our team, and thank you for it's wonderful to be sitting here looking at a 3-year balanced budget, because I remember when we weren't. And so let me just say it's not lost on us, the work that it took to get here. And please, Lily, don't drop. Sandy, don't drop. Maybe to your knees, say thanks, but not. We need you. So thank you for your great work, and Dr. Gonzalez for your leadership. It's great to be in this conversation as we continue to move forward. So if there are no additional questions or comments, I'll move to the last item on the agenda, which is new business to be considered at future meetings. Are there any new business items that people would like to add for consideration for future agenda? Any new business items? I'm sure our team will not have any problem populating an agenda, but if there are new things, this would be the time to share them. Okay. All right. Well, seeing none, I will move to our last item, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Okay. And with that, let me say thank you so much to everybody. Thank you again to the team for your work. Thank you, Maria, for making all of this happen and getting us where we needed to be. And we will see you at the next meeting. All right. Have a good day, everyone. Be well.
Recording stopped.